Welcome to our final Prognosticus episode of the 2025 season. It's the biggest weekend of the year, and the IHSA State Championships are here, and we've got your wall-to-wall coverage of every title matchup featuring our Chicago Catholic League powerhouses. We've got Montini's 4A showdown with Rochester, Providence and St. Francis battling for 5A to shot at giant killer glory against East St. Louis. St. Rita squaring off with Brother Rice in a Southside grudge match for the 7A crown. And of course, the heavyweight finale, Mount Carmel versus Oswego, under the lights Saturday night for the 8A title. Joining me today is my co-host, Dan Frevaletti, and we'll break down the storylines, spotlight the playmakers, and make our picks for who's walking off the field with the hardware. And Dan, I started viewing some of the information for this a couple days ago, right? And I had pretty much decided on who I was going to pick in the games. And then the weather has kind of thrown a wrench into things for me. It's changed at least one of my predictions. Just knowing what the weather is going to be like.
Bet I can guess which one, but we'll get to
see
it when we get there,
right?
Because it may have changed mine too.
You think so? I was wondering if, I mean, because it is going to be, I mean, from what they're saying, it is going to be kind of nasty, right?
Yeah, I mean,
if you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
And yeah, it's not the first time that the state finals has been played in nasty weather, and
right.
You know, the kids, and the players usually love it, and coaches generally hate it. You know, and I am squarely in that. I would like now a day like today. As we record this, it's Friday. It's cold, but
right.
Give me the sunshine. You know, some cold weather, mild winds. You know, nothing too bad. The wind is the thing that is just so rough. It just there's some good kicking games among these teams that's going to be affected. You know, there's some good return games among these teams that are going to be affected. So sometimes it doesn't seem to be that big of a factor, but I think tomorrow has a potential to really impact these games in a way that is significant.
Yeah. Well, both teams are in the same conditions, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but it is interesting to think about some of the offenses and how it might change what they do or not. You know, it'll be interesting to see that, when the games are played. So looking forward to watching them. Yeah. And starting with some of the games today, Dan, lucky for them, they get to play today versus tomorrow.
Yep.
And, the one game we've got today that we're looking at is Montini and Rochester. It's going to be a good game, Dan. We know what Montini has done over the course of the year. They're 13-0. They have moved up a class, right, from last year. They were 3A champs. Now they're in the 4A title game against a very, very good Rochester team. I think a lot of people looking at this might say Rochester's the underdog. I don't think that plays in this game. I really don't.
No, I think you're right, Joe. I mean, you want to talk about experience in state championship and state finals. You know, Rochester's got it as much as anyone here. I mean, they don't have the number of titles of a Mount Carmel, or maybe them and Montini have similar number of state titles.
Maybe
both in that 6 range, but Rochester is a name. If you want to talk about schools that are there every year, Rochester's is in it, around it, right there every single year. So there's no sort of coaching experience factor that's going to be on the edge one way or the other. Obviously, we know Bukowski's been in like 65 state championships in different sports.
Yeah.
And
right.
and he's got the offensive coordinator has been there before. So, and Derek Leonard, the head coach at Rochester, is widely recognized, Joe, as one of the best coaches in the state.
Yeah.
And he's also one of the most innovative coaches, on the offensive side of the ball. So always have high-powered offense. They're a little more balanced this year than they've been in the past. They've got a great running game. So I think that's something that they might just look a little different that you see. They're led by Caden Stout, running back. He's got 1,300 yards, maybe something along those lines, 1,200 yards. So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And they've got I think they're almost exactly like running and passing, where their yardage is really close. So they are going to be, a difficult task for the Montini defense to stop. I was surprised to learn that these two teams hadn't played before. I thought for sure they had, but I think I was getting my Leonards mixed up at Rochester and Sacred Heart Griffin.
Yeah,
because I know I've watched Montini Sacred Heart Griffin play before, but I'm expecting, Joe, a high scoring game. I think Montini's linebackers are going to have to be really disciplined. I think Montini's also going to have to deal with some adversity. It would not surprise me if they are down by a touchdown or two at some point. But I think there's going to be a lot of possessions. This is going to seem like really deep, hard hitting analysis. But if Montini's defense can get some stops, they have a good chance to win the game.
Really?
Yes.
And score some points too.
If they can score a lot of points. Yeah. One note I made, Joe, is like I would imagine that the Rochester coaching staff has looked at the Montini Carmel game that was like 55-53 or something, whatever that was. I bet they have studied that backward and forward, because we've talked about Montini's defense just being awesome, and how great they've been, and that was a shock at that time that game was so high scoring, but that Montini's defense let that much up. So it'll be, I think, if their defense can put some pressure on Leonard, the quarterback for Rochester. He's a junior, and I think that's going to make the difference. I do think they get those defensive stops, Joe, that when they need them. I do think that they, can overcome adversity that they'll face. But based on their current defensive performance, I'm going to pick Montini, riding the Bronco on this one.
Okay.
What do you think? Who do you got?
I like Montini as well in this game. And, I kept looking at the defenses for both teams. And, I really feel like this is going to be a more of a high scoring affair, and both of these teams are used to doing that throughout the course of the season. They can both score a ton of points. I think what puts me over the top for Montini in this game is their defense and the number of turnovers Montini has been able to create on defense. I think it's over 30 or 32, 34, something like that, which is just an outstanding number, on defense. And it's led by their linebackers, Santino Ternuda and some of the others. But, I think that's what's going to I think Montini's going to score their points. I think Rochester's going to score their points. But I do think it's going to come down to Montini's defense and being able to get a turnover or two that kind of turns the tide of the game one way or another. So I'm going to pick Montini over Rochester in this game as well.
All right. CCL 1-0 right now.
CCL 1-0. Another state title. And the next one, Providence and St. Francis, it's going to be another CCL state title.
Yes. A preview of our upcoming episode, Private versus Public.
Right, really. What do you see in this game? Now, this one will take place on Saturday. This 5A through 8A is all Saturday. A, as we mentioned, is the last game today. So do you think it makes a difference at all to you in your pick as far as this one maybe being played in the inclement weather?
Yeah, Joe, this is the one I predicted that you maybe flipped on, because I think I I was leaning Providence, going into this, just because I feel like the one thing that you get from Providence is really good defense. Always have very good defensive back play. They've got an all conference DB in Blake Garrigan. He's going to be really critical. Gavin Farley, their linebacker, has been great in the playoffs. And then Dom Felice. So they've got him on all three levels, which to me that's a really good sign. I think the weather definitely favors Providence and Dom Vita and that quarterback running game. I think that becomes really important. That said, St. Francis and Brock Phillip, they are, he is as capable running as anybody in the conference.
Right.
He can really run. It just seems like it's a less critical part of their offense. So it would be something that's for him to get 20 carries. Maybe he's done that before, but I don't know that it's what they consider their bread and butter, where it is for Providence.
Right.
Yeah. So if weather is going to be a factor, I think the edge goes to Providence. And so, but the thing that's kind of different about the playoffs right now is St. Francis's defense has been outstanding and led by defensive back, Tanner Glock, and they've got good guys on each level too. Jalen Torres, is a big dude up the middle. So two very evenly matched teams. I'm going with Providence and I may have flipped, but I don't know. I thought I was leaning Providence, and I thought, well, St. Francis has been really good, but I think I'm sticking with Providence and I think they're more geared offensively toward handling, the adverse weather.
Yeah, and you're right. This is a game that I flipped on based on the weather. I was going with St. Francis. And just because of the explosive nature of their offense, with the wide receivers with Washington and I can't say Milivojevic. That's it. Yeah. You know me and pronouncing names.
It's one of my favorite things about the podcast.
Yeah, but I think, because of the weather, that explosiveness kind of gets taken away, from St. Francis. I mean, it's not just the snow and the conditions, but it's going to be the wind as well.
The wind is the worst.
Which is going to be tough. And I think it's going to be a kind of try and grind it out type of game tomorrow on the ground. And I think if you look at the game that way and you look at who Providence has and what their identity has been over the past, 4 or 5 games, where they are willing to just grind it out, with Brodemacker and Braden McKay, 2 outstanding running backs. They've got Brian Tensa up front. They run behind him. And I think they rushed for over 200 yards in their game last week. So, I think they're going to stick with that, and I think it's going to be tough for St. Francis to stop them consistently. And I think Providence is going to grind it out on the ground and keep St. Francis's offense off the field as much as they can. I think this is going to be a close game, but I'm going to give the edge to Providence as well, and I'm going to go with Providence in this game.
Yeah, it has the potential, Joe, to be maybe the worst. I think I was looking at the forecast. This might be the worst weather game. The day games might be worse than the night game. The primetime game tomorrow night, 8:00. But yeah, so yeah, it'll be fun. It is. I love that it starts early. It's got a great feel to it. I love the morning games. In the state championships.
Yeah.
So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure you're looking forward to this one too, Dan. Fenwick and East St. Louis, in the, let's see, this is the 6A state championship game. East St. Louis, do you think, since they like to run the ball, they've got a really dominant running back, and I've got his name. You probably know it off the top of your head. What's their running back's name?
Myson Johnson Cook.
One of the things the stats, I was looking at his stats, and he has over 1,000 yards rushing in under 100 attempts.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. He is 6'3". You know, I've seen him listed anywhere from 215 to 230. He can fly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, his opening run, I think last week against St. Lawrence was for 20 yards, but he kind of was in full sprint mode down the sideline. And I thought, oh my God, I can't imagine being a high school linebacker and thinking, I got to come up and
yeah, I know,
and hit this guy. So you cannot let him get ahead of steam. But Joe, I looked at their offensive line, did a little deep dive on it. They have, I'm going to name them. Left tackle is senior Terrell Berryhill, 6'6", 265. Left guard is sophomore Jerry Richmond, 6'2", 280. Center is a senior Jordan Henderson, 6'1", 305. Right guard is a senior Myrell Tillman, 6'3", 318. Right tackle is a sophomore Janelle Donnelly, 6'6", 320. So that averages 6'3.5", 297.6 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, big and good, not big just
and good.
Yeah. Yes. I used to have a coach who used to say, you know, sometimes you see teams with little fat guys and sometimes you see teams with big fat guys. That is not East St. Louis. They are well coached. You know, they do zone blocking scheme. They do some gap, you know, and they are really good. Really good. And their quarterback he reminds me, he's a guy who just gets the ball out quickly. I've seen them have quarterbacks with bigger arms, you know, and do some more things that this quarterback does, but he does a great job of distributing the ball. They're almost impossible to stop. And Joe, we've stressed in the playoffs size, speed, and coaching talent, you know, especially that good size. East St. Louis has it. I don't think Fenwick has enough on their lines to stop East St. Louis. So my pick's East St. Louis in this game.
Yeah, you know, and I was looking for ways or trying to think of ways that, I mean, Fenwick comes in as the underdog for sure, right, in this game. And I was looking for ways that, you know, how could Fenwick upset East St. Louis? And, you know, they would need probably a ton of breaks, a ton of turnovers, you know, and Fenwick has shown that they can you know, get the turnovers when they need it. They've shown real resilience, and they've got an outstanding running back in their own right in Jake Thies too, right? So, but you're right. I just don't think they have the number of players or maybe size and talent that you're going to need against this East St. Louis team, especially on defense, to try and stop their running game. And they're probably just going to run the ball, you know, based on, you know, what's going to happen with the weather tomorrow. And, you know, who's going to win that battle? If it's just a running game, I think it's got to be, you've got to go with East St. Louis, you know. So I'm going to pick East St. Louis as well in this game. And, you know, I think Fenwick gives them a good game, gives them a battle, but I do think East St. Louis ends up winning this game over Fenwick.
You know, and the weather thing, I think it hurts Fenwick in this because of their strong kicking game. You know, Noah Sir, you know, he's a weapon when you have him. And when you have a team, when you look at that's so talented, you think, can we get an advantage in special teams? And I don't know if that's the case with the weather being like it is, you know, and how, depending on how the wind's blowing and that sort of thing too, it might extend some field goals, but you've got to have the opportunity, all that. So I don't think the weather is an advantage. Maybe it slows down East St. Louis a little bit, you know, but Joe, as a little preview for one of our future episodes, the private versus public that I'm sure we're going to do.
We're gonna talk about private versus public.
Maybe we should. Maybe.
All right. Okay.
But they're East St. Louis, the town of East St. Louis, their school district is just East St. Louis. I didn't know if it went into other areas, and you know, so the town of East St. Louis is around 18,000 people, maybe 18,500, which is similar in size to, I think most similar was Palos Park. So in that 18,500 people, they've got quite a team, right? They are just loaded with athletes, and so, you know, just a little food for thought.
Food for thought. All right.
Yes,
I will. filing that away.
Okay.
I'll be thinking about it over the next week, before we dive into one of our favorite episodes of the year. Yes. All right. What do you think about Brother Rice and Rita, Dan? Another CCL state championship here.
Yeah.
Just the only thing is which one?
Yeah. Isn't it funny I think we have, when we've talked about St. Rita, we've talked about them like midway through the year when they were struggling. We were like, who would have thought that St. Rita would be 1-4 at this point and backs against the wall and,
right.
and win or you're out type of scenario. Now we are to a point where, like, who would have thought St. Rita, would be here after their start and playing how they're playing? They are just rolling.
Yeah.
And this is a rematch, Joe, of I don't know if it was week 3, maybe week 3 or 4, but 28-10 roughly, or 29-10 Brother Rice victory, but it's a different St. Rita team.
It is.
And hitting on all cylinders offensively and really, really capable, getting a lot of production from, I don't even know if Stephen Armbruster played in that first game, but Stephen Armbruster, Walter Jones, they're like a different team, which we've said several times.
They are, yes.
Yeah. That said, I have called Brother Rice one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the state all year. I think that they are one of these, uber talented teams with great playmakers, great size, ability to beat you through the runner pass. I don't know that the weather will affect Brother Rice all that much. They get dominant line play on both sides of the ball. So, in what I think could be a good game, a better game than maybe people think, I'm going to go with Brother Rice.
Yeah. And last week I said after I picked Rita to lose last week, right? And I think the week before as well. And maybe the week before that too. And I've been wrong every week. And I give Rita just a ton of credit for what they've done. I mean, their backs were against the wall during the regular season. And, somehow they fought their way back multiple different ways. I think they relied on their running game while Walter Jones was out, and that seemed to work for him. And then now he's back, and now Armbruster and him are connecting and, back to their explosive selves, on offense as well. So, this, I hate to pick against Rita again, but when how we feel about Brother Rice, and we've watched them just dominate all year. And I agree, they are one of the top, 2, 3, 4 teams in the state for sure. And I think a game like this tomorrow is going to come down to the line play and who can put pressure on the other team the most. And I believe that's Brother Rice, with their defensive line play as well as their offensive line play. And I think that's where these games are going to be won tomorrow. And I've got to give Brother Rice the edge from that standpoint. So I'm picking Brother Rice in this game too, Dan.
Yeah, and like we talked about when you apologized for picking against St. Rita, they are thrilled right now. They are all thrilled.
They are thrilled.
On the south side, they are really thrilled that you just picked against them again. So they think that is the last little point of preparation they needed before kickoff.
Sure they will when I'll be releasing this today, right away, and I'm sure they'll all be huddled around, or watching, listening to this, just waiting to hear what my prediction is. So
yes, big roar.
There'll be a loud cheer will go out. Yeah. Okay, got it. All right, the final game, the 8A game, Mount Carmel versus Oswego, Dan. And Mount Carmel comes in undefeated. We know what they've done over the course of the year. I didn't quite know what Oswego had done, what got them to this point. And when I looked at some of the information on them and some of the stats and who kind of their key players were, they really have relied on their defense.
Yeah.
Their defense has been just really stout and outstanding. But the The one thing that they haven't seen is an offense like Mount Carmel, and probably an offensive line like Mount Carmel's. And, Mount Carmel is a different animal. We know that. We've seen that. I mean, really more of a national type team that's ranked nationally, and they should be by the way they've played. And the game will be tomorrow. It'll be later, so maybe the weather's not quite as bad. But even if the weather is bad, Mount Carmel can hurt you in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be just throwing the ball 50 yards down the field to one of their outstanding wide receivers. I mean, they've got some excellent running backs as well. Yeah. And, I think they're going to be able to do kind of what they want as far as on the offensive side of the ball. And, I think from a defensive standpoint for Mount Carmel, Oswego hasn't shown that they're all that explosive of an offense, and they will not have seen a defense like Mount Carmel's either. So I think Mount Carmel wins this game over Oswego, and probably by at least a couple of touchdowns, in my opinion.
All right, yeah, it's because Oswego, it's kind of an unexpected run for them to this point. Yeah. I think I saw they returned like 6 to 9 starters, depending on how you counted it from last year's team. We really liked last year's team. They beat Joliet Catholic, pretty easily early in the year. But you mentioned it, Joe. They were led by their defense. So Gianni Casarella, all-name
good
team
name
right there.
Yes,
all-name team, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And all-state linebacker Andre Labuda. They definitely know what they're up against. They seem to have the right attitude, reading some of the reporting this week. They've got a great kicking game. So, again, the weather, depending on that could help or hurt. I think they would choose no wind, and maybe they'll get that later in the day. I'm not sure. But, one thing I think Oswego will do that we've talked about all year, they will not kick it to Quentin Burrell.
Yeah. Did you send a text or something like that to the coach?
Nope. Even though I'm local, I did not. Yeah. I will not did not send a text. I think they probably have figured that out.
They figured that out. Yes.
Some teams though didn't figure it out even by watching the film.
Right.
Yeah, but Caleb Stumpenhorst is their kicker. Also another great name.
Another good name. Yeah. For
sure. He is both their kicker and punter. Super strong foot. Big guy. I think for kicker and punter. So we'll see what the weather is like and how that affects the kicking game. For this game, it could be an equalizer, but like you said, Joe, Mount Carmel, if they can't throw the ball because of the conditions, they can run the ball just fine. Right. And that's what you see when you think about the weather. You think, well, is there a team that really relies on the passing game that's really going to hurt them? But that's not Mount Carmel, whether it's their running backs or the quarterback Dowling. Running, he's capable of doing that. I look at the likely outcome of points scored. I think if Oswego can find a way to get to 21 points and pull out all the stops, they can get there. But because their defense lets up 10 points a game, and I think it's going to be a factor, and it could. But 21 points is, I think, where they have to get to maybe think about an upset and in adverse conditions. And if their defense would shut out a really good Lockport team, that score was really surprising. But I think Mount Carmel, best team in the state, them or East St. Louis, and I think Mount Carmel takes the 8A championship.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this special state championship edition of Prognosticus. 5 trophies, 7 stories. And by the time the lights go out Saturday night in Normal, high school football will have crowned its champions. So huge thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us, and to Dan for keeping the hot takes coming. Make sure to follow the Varsity Voices Media Network on all podcast platforms, YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And for maybe some coverage over the next couple of days, and maybe some of our instant reactions to some of the games as well. So for Dan, I'm Joe Fervaletti, reminding you the future isn't random, it's predicted, and we will see you under the Friday night lights.